What up, dude? I have bad news.
No, you don't.
This is officially my last podcast on the Pursuit of Property podcast. I am resigning.
Thank
I'm
God.
in Mexico gear today. I am out and I am not coming back. I am relinquishing my spot with Jenny. Jenny's going to take over the podcast with you. Big upgrade.
There we go. Yeah, Did you hear me say? You said you were retiring. I said, thank God. I've been waiting for this day since the day we started.
God, you're the worst.
No. Let me sneak in the suitcase, please. All inclusive. Sounds absolutely phenomenal, bro.
Just
I
promise
am
to come back for a
so
minute.
highly jealous.
Don't get lost.
If I
Jenny
don't see a
didn't know
picture
she's
of
getting
you-
voluntold.
If I don't see a picture of you attached to a Mexican IV in a random Mexican freaking hospital, I won't view the trip as a success.
I cannot.
God, you're horrible. Well, welcome back.
The real reason we're here.
Jesus. Welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. Today, we have our first virtual guest in a long, long time. A big reason why we moved to the virtual platform here instead of in person is that we can bring people in from out of area and interview them. The people that we find interesting, the people helping our business, and the people that we think will help you. So I'm excited to personally introduce my coach. You guys have heard about her, but Jenny Hudspeth from REI Sales Tools. She's here today, and we're going to talk through some of her management philosophy, her history in the business. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I mean, if you guys have been listening to Scott for any amount of time, you know it's about to get real. So I'm excited.
Yeah, Jenny operates as my business coach, part-time therapist, the person I vent to about random things, both as a new parent and as a manager. So, Jenny, appreciate you over the last few months and all the help. Let's
Jenny,
start.
you haven't fired him yet?
Yeah, he hasn't
You haven't fired him as a client yet?
Tell me I didn't call you and ask. I had to call one day and
Did
literally
you?
say, yes. I called one day and I said, I'm so sorry if I catfished you into taking me as a coaching student. Like, I came in, I'm going to do everything. And, dude, it's hard. This program is hard. So,
Yeah,
I've
but
had
my
some
favorite
moments of
days are the
pushback.
days that I piss Scott off because he always comes back re-energized, refocused, and ready to go. But there have been many a moments of frustration, but we've turned it into problem-solving fascination, which is awesome.
yeah.
Jenny, it's because after you guys meet in your coachings, he comes to me, I wear the husband hat and the therapist hat, and I get him re-energized back for the next meeting 2 days later.
I love it.
I hate you. It's kind of true, though. They say salespeople are the biggest divas and the hardest employees. So, hey, I just live up to the name. That's all it is. Well, Jenny, a lot of people aren't going to know who you are at the start of this podcast. So why don't you give a little context as to who you are?
Well, I always hate this question because I really don't know fully how to answer it because I could go down the path of SpongeBob is my favorite TV show to I have two children, Walt and Maddie, who are wonderful. But in the business world, in the real estate world, I am a sales coach. I call myself a confidence coach. Because there are plenty of people out here in the world that are speaking to sales process, that are speaking to sales techniques and tactics. But really the value that I feel like I bring to the REI space is a genuineness and authenticity and something that is bigger than just tactical. It is transformational is really where my heart is. So I came into the REI space as a lead manager, a widow weed manager. That is the story that I tell myself, a lead manager. But it was in 2019, I got hired as an inside sales rep for a wholesale company that was operating out of Lower Alabama. There were 4 lead managers and I think maybe 6 acquisition managers at the time. And the COO trained me. He was literally the one doing my training. He was kind of in that sales manager, probably the seat that many people on this call that are listening to this are in, kind of that solopreneur wearing 5 different hats, or feeling like a solopreneur wearing 15 different hats, right, with a team and zero management experience. And so he was training me, and like 2 weeks in, I looked at him and I said, "What's equity?" And he was like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" So my growth in the space has been the school of hard knocks and very, very quick, like drinking out of a fire hose. So I started as a lead manager, quickly moved into a sales management position within a few months of being with the company, turned over a sales team 100%. And then we kind of rebuilt with my COO from the ground up. We were in 2 markets when I first started, and by the time that I left in 2023, we were in 8, and we scaled from probably, I would say, a team of like 10 to a team of like 175. So between lead managers, acquisition managers, disposition reps, TCs, marketing, growth, massive growth. So it was fun. It was like, I always tell people it was like changing a flat tire, driving 99 miles. We used to make jokes like, do you want to change a flat tire going 99 miles an hour down the interstate? Welcome to our company. Do you want to wake up at 2 a.m. to 15 text messages from your COO? Welcome to our company. At 5 a.m., we're awake. Welcome to our company. So, it was an interesting journey. I'm truly thankful for the experience, because I feel like the company that I worked for was not afraid to invest in tools, resources, outside influence. And so we weren't scared to pay for the best of the best, which was really smart. So you are who you surround yourself with. And so I got to be around some really high level people, and I was the dumbest one in the room. And so I asked, and I'm not scared to ask questions. And I'm not scared to look stupid. So I did, and I learned. You either win or you learn, and I definitely learned a lot.
I love it.
What drew you to the lead manager seat at that company, real estate in general? Because a lot of us, I know Scott and I, Scott started as a barista, knew nothing about real estate. I was going to school, didn't even know what a realtor was, an investor was. I knew nothing about real estate and kind of fell into it. How did you even get introduced into the space?
Kate, that's such a good question. I think that I'll tell you my heart. I genuinely feel like it was ordained. Like the Lord had this for me. And this was part of his design when he created me, because I worked I was an AT&T authorized retailer before. So I sold AT&T fiber optic internet. I did business to business for AT&T for a little bit. And then before that, I sold jewelry retail at a K Jewelers. And then before that, I sold shoes at a Journeys in Birmingham, Alabama. And so I kind of have been in the sales world, but I worked for AT&T for a few years and really learned a lot about communication. Selling over the phone was something I was comfortable doing. Managing a CRM was something I was comfortable doing. My growth at that company, I got to a point where I realized, like, this is not a healthy environment. It was one of those traditional, typical sales environments where you go to work to make sales, to go to happy hour, to go to the bar. And we literally, our office was like 20 feet within walking distance of a bar. So we were at the bar at 4:00, and it just wasn't healthy for me. I've been sober now for 6 years. Which is like a crazy testament, it's a whole nother topic we do not have to get into. But I left that company because I realized the environment that I was in was not one that it was not one where I felt like I could thrive. And so I started looking. I left that company in December, and I was unemployed for 4 months, looking for jobs, and I found inside sales position. I think I applied for this role in November. I left my company in December and got called in April, which also tells you the hiring process of the company that I worked for was just like an absolute cluster because I applied in November and got hired in April. You know, which was just funny, but yeah, so it was really ordained. It was not, I want to be in real estate. It was, I'm good at communicating on the phones. I'm looking for a phone sales position. And then I got into the company and realized that the company didn't have a lot of data confidence. I went in for I started in April, so January, February, March, April, May, June. So we did a quarterly review in June. And my boss, my COO, called me in for that review, and he had been given some data from a manager in the company. And he was like, on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being the worst, 4 being the best, performing wise, he said, you're a 1. And I said, respectfully, I'm the best employee that you have, and I can prove it to you if you give me an hour. And he just kind of like, in cartoons where you hear like blink, 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 like his eyes, he just like blinked his eyes at me. And I feel like I audibly heard the blinks, blink, blink, blink. He was like, what is happening? Who is this girl? Who does she
What a
think
wild thing as a new hire to tell somebody when they give you a 1 on a performance review to be like,
Yeah, well, I knew it wasn't true. And I felt like, I'll tell you the truth, I felt like it was a character assault, right? Which, like, the feedback that I received felt like it was an attack on my integrity, and who I am. And so I don't play with that. Like, I am who I say I am, and I'm going to do the best that I can do. And if I am failing, I definitely will own it, but I knew I wasn't. And I knew that he had not, I grew up with my dad, and he always used to tell me, trust but verify, right? I knew that he hadn't verified any of the data that he had. So anyway, I went out and I brought my report. It was literally like, I felt like I was like a business plan. Like I had data analyzed because I'd been tracking it for a month since I've been there. So I knew where I stood as far as the information goes. So I brought it back in there. I gave it to him. I presented it to him. I showed him what he was missing. He just kind of looked at me. He said, thank you for this. You can leave my office now. I was like, oh God, what have I done? Oh my goodness. And so I left his office, and he kind of came back to me a couple of weeks later, and he said, hey, I want you to audit our system. I want you to audit everything. I want you to go reconcile the data, and I want to put you in a kind of junior sales management role for a little bit. I was the assistant sales, the manager to the assistant manager.
The assistant to the assistant sales manager.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of, I got in because by happenstance was the answer to the question you asked. I feel like it was ordained, and that is kind of how I moved into the management seat of the company.
It's funny hearing stories, Kate. It feels like every person that you and I talked to, it almost seems like every single person's response to how they got into real estate was like, it wasn't my choice. It was.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to hear that because now you've been in it. You and I joined pretty much around the same time. I joined January of 2018, but I kind of got into the investment space starting in 2019. You stuck around. I mean, you've elevated from lead manager. Did you skip acquisitions, go straight to sales manager? You had some sales experience outside of real estate, so that helps.
Right. So I was kind of put into that sales manager role from the lead management position. I really managed the lead intake side of things. I was given some cold callers at first. There were 4 cold callers in Belize. And they had been a part of our organization kind of as an external appendage, just like a random limb of the business, right? That was not they were literally like the 4th or the 3rd leg. Like, I don't know. They were weird, and they weren't integrated, and they didn't feel like a part of the team. And so I was given these 4 people, and they told me, hey, Jenny, you got 11 weeks. Right, it was kind of part of that quarter. They said, you got 11 weeks to make them profitable, or else we're letting them go. And I was like, oh my gosh. I don't want to be responsible for 4 people and not having a career, right? Or not having a job anymore. Like I felt responsible. And so they were costing the company money for months and months and months. We were able to I was able to get them plugged in, make them feel like they were a part of our team. Really not make them feel, genuinely make them a part of our team, make them a part of our culture, get them integrated, give them access to our CRM. They didn't even have access to the data. Like, it's insane. Like, how could they be profitable if they don't even have resources and tools? So just equipping them with the tools that they needed, and we turned around in that 11 weeks period, and I literally 11x'd that cold calling team. And so they were like, something is here, something is happening here, what's going on? And so when these were people who had been credit repair call center reps at one point, or what I'm saying, they were never really integrated into the team. And so here I am teaching them how to say names in backwoods Mississippi so that they can communicate with our clients, right? Like, it's Gaucher, it's D'Iberville. I'm showing them videos like y'all probably don't because you're in California, but the Roll Tide Super Bowl commercial, or might not have been Super Bowl, but it was like the doctor catches the baby and he's like, Roll Tide, and they're like saying amen, and it's like Roll Tide. So I'm showing them videos. I'm getting them, immersed in our culture and who we are and our clients, and just different things, things that go above and beyond what normal sales training, right? I wanted them to know our clients, to be a part of it, to get the jokes, to be able to communicate in real ways. So yeah, I that was my first kind of baby, was that cold calling team. And then they transitioned from cold callers to inside sales reps, where they were intake. And then we grew them from, 4 to 15 to 30 to 75 lead managers at a call center, a brick and mortar in Belize. So that was a really cool journey. And I've never sat fully in that acquisition seat. I've gone on, gone on appointments, I've had the conversations, but no, I am not acquisition.
Well, it's interesting. I only bring it up because a lot of the people listening are going to have gone through all the seats. And I think it adds credibility when you've lived in a lot of the seats. And you're not just, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting hired from outside and coming in with a certain skill set and not needing to know what all of your employees do down to the minutia, because you've done it, you can learn it. But it's something interesting that I respected when I signed up for your program. And it's something that, like, you definitely have more skill with the lead manager area of the business than I do. And I think that's because you really focused on it, whereas I was more in the acquisition seat. I want to pivot the conversation.
Yeah.
Go for it. Did you have something?
I was just going to say that, like, coming into the sales management role, being responsible, once the inside sales team was up and off the ground, then I was focused on the acquisition role. My title was Director of Acquisitions. And so, which is really the two components, lead manager, inside and outside. But I think I don't want to say I had a chip on my shoulder. I would tell you that I had very intense imposter syndrome because of what you're talking about. And that imposter syndrome led me to listen and learn and lean in and to go hunt for information and knowledge, because I felt like if I'm responsible for these acquisition managers' success, and I don't have this long-standing trust built on because I've done it, right? Like, I've always felt, I hear these salespeople, these sales coaches and leaders in the space that are like, if you've never done it, you can't, there's just another sales guru, right? Like, it's really hard for me to hear, because I haven't sat in that seat, and because I do believe I have what it takes. And I know that I'm capable, I've made it, I literally have operational excellence and experience. But because of that imposter syndrome, I've had to work through that, right? Learn how to overcome that mindset. But because of that, it really drove me to be a student of the craft.
Argue the opposite on having no experience. Why would that help you?
Well, I mean, I think that I'll tell you why it helped me, because in this space, the sales mindset has been always be closing for so long. Just focus on the close, this hard closing mindset, with very little focus on the impact, the feeling, the emotional aspect of it. It's just like, I think about, what is it, Mean Girls? Like, you're a pusher, Katie. Like, push, 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 push. That has been my experience with sales, is you just have to be pushy. And I see a lot of car salesmen in the industry, come into this REI space, and that's the mindset that they have. And that's what has worked in the past. And I just believe just because it has worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to carry us. And it has honestly conditioned our sellers to respond negatively. And so when I saw the way that they were being responded to, just observing and listening, and not having that same background and experience or belief, right? Not having that same belief that this is the only way and this is the only way that works. It wasn't hard for me to question it and to find ways over, around, under, and through it. And so because I'm not an acquisition manager, I could see past, I would say, short-term, what's it called? Instant gratification. I could see past it and see what we were actually missing out on in a lot of ways.
I was going to say, that was the thought that came to my head, is sometimes I encourage my team to do things that are wrong because I think to myself, if I were in their seat, I wouldn't go to that appointment.
Right.
But I think having not been in the role, it does allow you to think critically and just make a business decision versus an emotional one, because, well, when I was in that seat, I wouldn't go. Well, just because you didn't go then doesn't mean you shouldn't go now.
You shouldn't go now, 100%.
Yeah.
So I see it as a massive opportunity. I saw it as a massive opportunity more than a hindrance, but the rest of the world still viewed it as a negative. And I'm so thankful for the COO that I had, because I know there were people who were saying she doesn't have any, why would you put her in the seat? Like there were people that were talking in his ear trying to convince him that it was a dumb decision, but he saw the action I was taking and supported the action and encouraged it. And so I have a lot of just thankfulness and gratitude for that experience and for that person. So, but anyway, you can pivot the conversation now. I just wanted to speak to that a little bit.
Well, I was curious. I mean, you have turned a lot of my thoughts on their head. You said it earlier. You think very, or your management philosophy is very unconventional compared to what I thought it was going in to this role. One of the things that I've definitely struggled with elevating into this role is, for the first time, I'm not responsible for my own behavior. I'm more responsible for enabling other people to do their behavior. And there were a lot of things that we could talk about, but I'm just curious. The very first meeting we had, we talked about two things. I think it was firing and the philosophy on firing, and getting results, and the triangle for getting results. I think Kate would enjoy hearing about this, and I also think a lot of listeners would enjoy hearing about this.
Okay, well, I'd love to go into it a little bit, but first I'd like to kind of ask you what was so significant about it to you? Like, what I know.
Damn, you're the guest. You're not coaching me today.
Can I put it back? What was why? Like, it resonated with you. Obviously,
So,
it impacted you in a big way. What if you could just summarize like the impact of it, just a little bit?
I want you to first give your definition of what a sales manager is.
Okay.
What's the purpose of a sales manager?
So most people, I'm going to tell you what most people believe it is, and then I'm going to tell you what I believe it is. I would say that most people believe a sales manager's job is to hold their team accountable. My job is to hold my team accountable as a sales manager to drive results for the company. Would you agree with that? Would you guys both agree with that concept?
Yeah, I
Yes.
took it even a step further. It was like, I am the last line of defense that revenue has to be coming in
Yeah,
or
it's all up to
over.
me.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like everything falls on. I have to carry the backpack. I have to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders because if I don't do it, nobody will. And
Yep.
that is how most managers operate. And I realized very quickly I could not live in that mindset. I could not live in that world. It was killing me slowly. And so I will tell you that my definition of a sales manager is that as my job as a sales manager, it's my job to enable my team to support action, to develop a process, and to contingency plan. I would say those are kind of the three. I know my definition isn't. I have. It's not fully constructed in here. You kind of put me on the spot, Scott. We wrote one, but those are the biggest things as a sales manager. It's my job to enable action. My job isn't to take the action. My job isn't to hold my team accountable. My job is to help my team hold themselves accountable. Right? So as a sales manager, it's not my job to crack the whip and micromanage every day. It is to create systems and processes and to plan so that my team can be enabled to take action at a high level without waste, without having to think, really, being able to jump into their role and execute at a high level. So I would say that the biggest definition difference isn't I'm not going to hold my team accountable. I'm going to help my team hold themselves accountable. I'm not going to wear the backpack. I'm going to help them strengthen their muscles so they can wear the backpack and they can carry their own weight.
Yeah, to me, it was like a game changer. It was an eye opener. I remember maybe within the first month, and it was kind of devastating to some degree. You turned to me and you were like, "You look like you're dying slowly." Mm-hmm. You said that to me. You said those words. Like I did not know you that well at that point. And that this conversation is what we talked about. And I can relate to the realizing you can't live in that feeling like you have to carry every moment. And I still have tendencies. I mean, Cade sees it all the time. Yep. And I've gotten a lot better at just accepting that my job is to be the general, not on site, and to be guiding the team. I'm not the man kicking down the door anymore. I'm not the man doing the day-to-day actions. I'm the person calling strategic decisions and then making sure that the plan is as good as it can be and contingency plan. And if the plan's not working, if the action being taken isn't getting the result, then look at the plan, not jump in and force whatever plan I had already made.
I will challenge that thought process just a little bit because at this point in the business, you haven't had to jump back in yet, right? But it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yes, all of those things 100%. We want to analyze, we want to evaluate. You have the choice management side of things, managing the choices and making the appropriate choices as the ebbs and flows of business happen. Those things are really important. But there were seasons in my experience as a manager running a sales team where I did all the things. I planned, I managed, I executed, my team was trained, and there were still COVID hit. Right? COVID hit. And so COVID hit and, we had to jump back in. There were things, you know what I'm saying? So like it wasn't like, just
100%. The default is not correct. Jenny or Scott in the seat kicking down doors. The default is get out as fast as possible so you can do these bigger things. Yes. But you're exactly right. There are times where you have to jump back in.
But knowing the process to determine when is the right time. That is one of the things that is some of the most important things we can learn. So
I'm gonna let Cade jump in. You and I could just talk over Cade. Cade is much more reserved than either of us.
I love being a fly on the wall. Jenny, I wanted to ask, I'm a strong believer that management and leadership skills can absolutely be cultivated. Yes. It may come easier to others than for some other people, but I think one of the stigmas is where people feel scared to try and become a better manager or a better leader and feel like maybe they're not cut out for it. But I'm a strong believer that those skills can be cultivated. With your transition into now being a coach, focusing on, business owners, sales managers, what's the biggest thing you see people fail at doing or doing incorrectly that hinders them from being a great manager or a great leader?
What do I see people do that hinders them from being a great manager or a great leader?
Katie's sitting on the screen. Just look at me like 4 months ago.
I think overall, and I still have to catch myself and struggle through this, struggle well with this. But we like to hear our voice. We like to hear ourselves talk. And we think it's this, like, you always revert back to default, to what's comfortable. And what has been comfortable for Scott and for me early on in that management career was to provide support by speaking, identifying problems, communicating what I see, what I think, what I feel as a manager, as a leader. We kind of put ourselves in that driver's seat, and we think that we are the center of the world. And we might not say that, but our actions show that. And so what I see so often is managers working towards being better leaders, but defaulting back to kind of factory settings, which is I have to lead. I have to be the one to speak. I have to be the one to tell them. And if I don't have the answer, then I'm a failure. I'm not a good leader. If I don't answer them if I don't jump when they say jump, I'm not a leader. People are going to perceive me as not helpful. And so we care more about errors, perception, and optics more than true transformation. You know what I mean? That I would say that's what I see the most, is people always refer back to what's comfortable, and what has been comfortable is wearing the backpack.
And how do you teach your students in your program? How do they break that?
So there are, I call them rules of engagement. They're the rules that we live by. And I literally have made Scott write them down a million times. Like the very first rule. The first rule.
If I say it, it's false. If they say it, it's true.
Yep. It's not about me. So if I say it, it's false. If they say it, it's true. It's not about me. We don't answer unasked questions. We ask questions. We don't make statements. We seek to understand before being understood. Those are the 5 rules of engagement. It's not about me. If we say it, it's false. If they say it, it's true. We ask questions. We don't make statements. Seek to understand before being understood, and don't answer unasked questions. So these are kind of the bumpers, if you will. But I know I didn't get a chance to go into this just a little bit, but Scott asked me about my philosophy on firing, and he asked about the results triangle, to talk a little bit about it. So one of the things that we talked about, most people in the management seat or in that leadership role, the natural, the comfortable kind of thought process when things are going wrong, right? When there are problems in the business, the first place most people go is, I've got the wrong people.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Talking about like contentious conversations. This conversation was the one that I think we got the most fired up about, and I had to go on a walk. Like this is a hard concept for people who have not done the hard work. This is I remember this is profound only because now I've done a ton of work for it. In the moment, it like really infuriated me. I think it's because it confused me, or it broke something in my self-identity. So keep going. But people that hear this, it sounds simple. It's not as simple as it sounds.
Yeah. What I love about this, though, is that what differentiates people is their ability to team, right? We're relational humans. Like this, we are literally made to be relational. And so your ability to communicate, your ability to team with others is the only thing different between, a homeless man and Elon Musk. It's like their ability to team and to have conversation. Horrible example, but you get it. And so what I love about this is that not only are we teaming inside of our business, but we also team with our partners, with our spouses, with our children. And so these concepts, it's not about me. Right? When my son has a meltdown, it's not because I'm a bad mom. It's not about me. Like, it's something going on inside of him. And I have to remind myself of that. And then, if I say it, it's false. If he says it, it's true. Right? And so and then don't, seek to understand before being understood. There have been so many moments where something has happened and I jump straight to, execution mode where it's like, don't do that. Blah, 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 blah. And he was like, but I was trying to help sister. Like, his intention was genuine, his execution was flawed, and I made him feel little, not big, right? And so these rules, they're not just for REI sales management. They are literally concepts that I live by in every facet of my life. So they are much bigger than just these 5 rules to write down on a piece of paper, for sure. And they are infuriating, and I still fail. But...
We'll jump into that triangle. You were jumping into the accountability triangle, or the success triangle.
Yeah, success so the mindset behind leadership and enabling action and not wearing the backpack. You asked me, one of the first conversations we had was on like success, results, and then like people. Our natural inclination is to go to, if things aren't working, it's the people's fault. And so I kind of gave Scott a lens to look through. We talked about a lens to look through when it comes to identifying problems and how to figure out the root, not the symptom. And so most of us go people first and then process last. But really it's like, okay, hey, what's the process here? What have we defined as the how do we operate in this area? What's the process? Are we in process or are we out of process? And if you don't have an answer, then there's no process. And who's responsible for the process? You are, as a manager. So it's not a people problem, it's a you problem. So if the process is there, then we have to go to the person and say, hey, what's the process? And if they don't know, then it's an expectation issue, right? And if they know what the process is and they didn't do it, then it's a training issue. And now that we've got the process, the expectation, and the training out of the way, and all of those things are there, they've been trained and they still don't do it, now it's a people problem. And people fire themselves. As a manager, I don't fire people. People fire themselves. The process allows people to fire themselves. And I can go to bed at night knowing I didn't take someone's job unnecessarily or out of reaction. Right? I didn't fire them or terminate them off of a feeling. I didn't give them a 1 based off of false data. Trust but verify. So that concept, I think, it kind of aligns with the sales philosophy, that sales management philosophy. People fire themselves. I develop the process. I follow the process, and the results will come. And so then Scott and I kind of talked about most people in the sales world are so focused on always be closing, so focused on the results. And so we talked about, I kind of teach this concept of the results triangle. In order to achieve the pinnacle, which is results, right? We need 2 things. The foundations of the pyramid are clarity and accountability. And so, we've said our job as a manager isn't to hold people accountable, it's to help them hold themselves accountable. So our definitions drive our actions. So accountability isn't let me micromanage you. Accountability is taking internal ownership over your role, over your responsibilities. So if the people on my team have a clear process, they know the expectation, they've been trained, right? They're clear. They know what needs to happen, when it needs to happen by, and how to do it. So there's clarity. The only thing that would keep us from getting results is their ability to take ownership and to execute. So that accountability piece. So either they're not clear or they're not accountable. If the results aren't there, something's wrong. And so that results, and I will tell you this, the triangle is one thing, but you cannot influence the triangle until you establish trust. like, you cannot help someone achieve results until you build trust with them. Just like in the sales world, right? In order to make a sale, we have to make a friend, right? The sales process is really just like a decision-making process. It's helping people drive action, make decisions, take action. So when I realized as a manager that, like, a sales process isn't just to sell or buy real estate, it can actually influence action, then I started processing, how can I apply the sales process to my sales team? How can I, treat them like sellers, right? And so that kind of shaped my philosophy that the sales process is universal. It works in my marriage. It works as a mother. It works in business. It works it works.
Jenny, what drove you to transition from doing all of these things in the company that you were working at, right? But what drove you to transition, taking all of that skill set and wanting to give back and help other business owners or help other people wanting to improve in that management or leadership seat with your program?
I'm going to say that it was ordained again. There were some transitions that were happening inside of the company post-COVID that I had worked for, and our visionary really wanted to completely restructure the operation. I had 35 boots on the ground acquisition managers, and the kind of model was to pivot them to virtual post-COVID. And you're talking about, we literally brought these people in with their personality profiles to be belly to belly energized by belly to belly boots on the ground interaction. And so pivoting them into that role of sitting behind a computer screen, I just didn't feel great about it. And so it was kind of the same concept of, like, I grew in the environment for as long as I could and realized that this environment no longer aligned with who I am and what I believed. And so I left on values more than anything, and decided that I remember looking at my coach and being, like, kind of making this decision and saying, like, do I have what it takes to be able to succeed not here? I doubted myself even on leaving. Like, do I know enough people? Have I gained enough knowledge? Like, do I have the skill set? And so I reverted back to, honestly, I'm not proud of that thought. Do I have what it takes? Because it's not about, I don't believe this. I don't believe that it's about my skill or what I have. Like, the Lord has a plan for me. And I was trying to live in my own strength and my own skill and my own power. And looking back, that was a really goofy way of thinking about it, because this was 100% what my purpose was. So I left, and I remember having the conversation with my husband of, like, I'm leaving and I don't have a plan B. Like, there's no plan A. Like, there's no plan. Like, here I am leaving another company with no plan. And the last time that I left and was unemployed, we lost everything. So literally, like, we lost our apartment. We had to move into some, like, it was just like a whole big thing. So when I left this time, I was like, I know what I enjoy doing and what gives me energy. I know what makes me feel great, and what, where I feel like my biggest genius is, my genius zone, right? I love managing. I've learned a lot. I want to take what I've learned in coaching and leadership and transition it into the world somehow. And so kind of got out and connected with my former business partner and started brainstorming. And it was actually supposed to be like a female-focused program. Like, we were going to only focus on the females.
That's how I made it. You do not
Boom,
assume my gender.
Roasted.
Yeah.
He said husband. All right. Look, I know my place in this relationship.
It was really originally supposed to be like female focused, female real estate investors changing everything or challenging everything. It was going to be called Fierce. And then I decided that really was such a small niche, and like the Lord had more for me and more for the people. There was just so many more people that I could impact in a big way. And so REI Sales Tools launched in February of 2023, and I haven't looked back. I've been able to work with teams all over the U.S., all over the world. I mean, right now I've got someone in Ireland, I've got someone in Spain, I've got people in Egypt, I've got people in the Philippines, in Belize. I mean, all over. My primary coaching is towards sales teams. So I coach acquisition managers and lead managers. And I take on a few sales management clients every 6 months. So Scott's one of the few that I have now from the sales management side.
Cade, why don't you wrap us up here with any final questions?
One last question, not necessarily management related, but I mean, Jenny, you've talked about a lot of change that's happened throughout your real estate investment journey. I find it surprising when Scott and I talk to somebody or we meet somebody in the space who has never at least once thought about quitting, thought about thinking they didn't have what it takes to succeed in this real estate space, that it'd be easier to go back somewhere else. It'd be easier to go back to business, go back to do this. Has there been a moment that stands out to you where you may have felt that? And what did that look like to you?
Way to ask a freaking hard-hitting question, Cade. Yeah, for sure. If I would be lying if I said no. There definitely have been those moments. Is there one that stands out? I can think of 3 that stand out, Early on in my management career, I used to crawl under my desk at the company that I was at, and I would crawl under my desk and I would cry because I wasn't going to let these grown men see me cry. And my story in my head was that I don't have what it takes because I haven't sat in the seat. So that was kind of the first. I should just go back to being a lead manager because I know I'm comfortable there. I know what I'm doing, and I don't have to. I'll have to figure it out. It's easy. So I would cry under my desk, and then I literally would hide so they wouldn't see me daily. So I would say that was like the first time. I will tell you that when I left the company, I've already told you when I left, I'm not sure I have what it takes. That was the second moment. And then about a year into coaching in REI Sales Tools, I kind of started to question, like, what is this all for? Kind of just reanalyzing my vision for my life and my why. I started working with a vision coach, and I still work with my coach now. And he was asking me the hard-hitting questions, and I didn't have an answer of why should I work hard, or if my kid asked me why do I work hard, why should I work hard? Why should I tell him to work hard? And so for me, a lot of this journey has been deepening my faith in a lot of ways, challenging me outside of myself. But this last moment that really stands out is just kind of that imposter syndrome of like, I love doing this, and I could be making so much more doing something else. And so reminding myself of what's driving me. It's not to be making millions of dollars coaching. It's to be making millions of impacts in people's lives and transforming the people around me and helping them, being a part of their journey. So I did. I had a sales team that I'd been working with for over a year ask me to come on as their sales manager. And I loved the team. I loved the values. I loved the people. I still do. And I would have done anything for them to come in and to coach them and in that way. And I cried telling the owner no, because I realized that while I could do it and was fully capable and had the time and the energy and all the things, that it did not align with my definition of success. It did not align with my vision. And I'm really thankful that I had the support that I did, because I now have an 8-month-old little girl, and I loved being able to take the time with her. She needed it. And so I have a 4-year-old little boy and an 8-month-old little girl, and I get to spend Monday, Wednesday, Friday being mommy. So
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Freaking Cade, dude.
No. Scott, to wrap us up, I want to turn and ask you too. Obviously, we knew bringing Jenny on, we were super stoked, being the first kind of virtual guest since we've moved to this format. I've been able to be a fly on the wall, kind of sitting in on your guys' coaching meetings for the past close to 6 months. But Scott, I mean, shout out Jenny a little bit. Like, what's been the biggest takeaway? How much of an impact has it made on you as a manager, as a leader, on our sales team, for our company? Give Jenny your shout out a little bit for her program.
Have had a few conversations with people, and I'm gonna pose it this way, Jenny, that you're interviewing if you're gonna accept them, not if they're interviewing if they want to be in your program. I mean, you were very clear that you're selective in who you take for the sales management stuff. I'll say this. I willingly signed up for this program, joined it knowing it would be hard, and it was way harder for me than I expected. And I have never in my career felt so much strain trying to elevate, because this is a bigger jump than I've ever made. But I'll just speak from facts. I'll let facts speak for themselves. Jason and I looked at our numbers from the sales portion of our business, and from leads in to dollars back, we outperformed any quarter period by a lot. And that is hard in this market. And so what Jenny teaches works. And I think, Jenny, crediting you, you're not a guru. Gurus claim they know what they're doing, and then the results don't speak for themselves. The results spoke. We started in February, and here we are in June. In the last 4 weeks, or if you include next week, in a 40-day period, I will work in the sales business 16 days. All the rest was freed up to work on other bigger things that I wanted to work on. And I've never been able to do that ever. And that was encouragement from Jenny in training. So if you're trying to, what I would call, change your business from being a hobby to a real business, where you don't have to be there every moment of every day for it to keep working, I would highly recommend it, with the one caveat: do not join it if you think it's going to be easy. Is that a fair assertion, Cade?
I think it's
No, absolutely fair. Absolutely.
I know Jenny
fair.
thinks it's fair. Jenny knew it was hard work. She even warned me. But Jenny, it was so cool to have you on. You're our first out-of-area guest in almost 4 years.
wow.
And so,
Really honored.
well, if you count John, then no. But John came into town for it.
In person.
It's exciting to
Doesn't count.
have you on. I think these are the types of podcasts that Cade and I were envisioning when we said we wanted to pivot to virtual, is bringing in somebody that we value, that has brought a ton of insight to us, that we can enjoy asking questions to and share with the people around us. So, Jenny, thanks for taking the time out of your day. I know it's a work day for you. You said Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are mom days. Work days are Tuesday, Thursday. But getting in here before all the other responsibilities you have and just sharing your thoughts with all of the viewers, and specifically with Cade and myself.
I appreciate you letting me be here. I feel very honored. So, thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. Where
Jenny-
can people find you? Online, social media, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you guys ignore my social media. It's mostly embarrassing pictures of me and my kids. But you can find me on REISalesTools.com. You can also find me on social media. It's personal and business as well. I don't separate it. I am who I am. But Jenny Hudspeth You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and REISalesTools.com.
Awesome. Well, Jenny, I'll see you in an hour
Yeah.
where the roles are reversed and I'm the one getting interrogated.
Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good one.
You too.
Thanks, Jenny.